everyone, this is 2.6 Articles of the Confederation, and the objective for today is that students will be able to describe the weaknesses under the Articles of Confederation by analyzing powers under the Articles of Confederation. So the Articles of the Confederation were the first form of government underneath the colonies' independence. So after the colonies declared independence against Great Britain, and before we even really won the Revolutionary War, the Articles of Confederation were put together to help run and create a government for the colonies. So underneath the New Republic, and when I say the New Republic, I mean underneath the colonies after they declared their independence, what inspired the Articles of Confederation? And let me write this so it's a little bit darker again, my apologies. Well, first off, they were fear. They were afraid of strong, powerful governments. That because of what had happened to them with Great Britain and Great Britain controlling everything. And so they didn't want a strong central government. They didn't think that was going to be a good thing. But they also had a problem because the states were not united. So every state was kind of doing its own thing, which caused a lot of problems. So they realized that we need to do something to bring everybody together. And then they decided that they wanted a republic, which was inspired by a man named Plato, who was a philosopher. He wrote a book called The Republic, which you can see here to the right. So they wanted a republic, and a republic is going to be a government where citizens ruled through elected officials. So that is what inspired the Articles of Confederation, this idea of we don't want anybody to have too much power and control us. We need something that is going to unite and bring us together. And then thirdly, we want a republic where the citizens get to elect officials and those represent them in their form of government. So the Articles were actually written under the Second Continental Congress. They were the ones that wrote the Articles of Confederation. And what happened under the Articles of Confederation, or what the Articles of Confederation said, is they gave the states power, because again, they were afraid of a strong central government. Each state had one vote. So each state was completely equal as far as voting is concerned. Didn't matter how big or how small you were, everybody had a vote. In order to pass a law, you needed 9 out of 13 states to agree. So you needed a strong majority in order to pass a law. Some of the problems was the federal government had no power to trade. So the trading was all done by states individually, which could be problematic when working with other foreign governments. So the federal government itself could not trade. Also, Congress or the federal government could not tax. So they had no way of getting money. So if you went to war with somebody, there was no way for them to pay for every state. Every state was kind of independent in that fact. So it really created a lot of inequality and also prevented the federal government from really having any power. So this really led to a weak federal government, which became very problematic. So because the federal government had no power to tax, they had no way of gaining money. So they had to discover a new way to try to gain money as a federal government. So no taxation led to the government needing money. So they decided to sell land and expand. How did they do that? Well, they did that with the Land Ordinance of 1785. And what the Land Ordinance of 1785 just said was, go ahead and survey the land to the west so you can sell it. And then 2 years later, that led to the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And what that did was divided the land into territories and developed a plan for how to admit new states into the Union. And so this was their plan for how to gain money, since they didn't have the ability to use taxation as a way to get money. So Shays' Rebellion is what ended up leading us to end the Articles of Confederation. And the reason being is after the Revolutionary War, states were in debt. And so they started to collect a lot of taxes, or had very high taxes. Now remember, the federal government could not collect taxes, but states could. So in addition to states collecting a lot of taxes, farmers were also in debt to British banks. So colony farmers owed money back to British banks, and British banks were requesting that money be sent to them not in cash currency from the colonies, but in silver or gold, which many colonists just did not have. And so you had states were in debt after the war, so they started to collect a lot of taxes. So in 1786, a man by the name of Daniel Shays led an uprising against the tax hikes. He actually lived in Massachusetts. And although the uprising didn't last for very long, and although the state government was able to stop it, it brought to light a lot of attention. It made people realize the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. So the results of this was that it questioned the power of the federal government. And it kind of gave people this realization that the federal government may not need a lot of power, but needs more than what it currently has. And so it also led to George Washington becoming involved in politics again, and led to the creation of the current U.S. Constitution. There's a famous saying after George Washington learned of Shays' Rebellion that this would be the end of our government. And so it made him realize that we needed to recreate our government, and that the government under the Articles of Confederation was not working. So in summary, the Articles of Confederation had a very weak central government, no ability to tax its people, so they had no real way of making money. The government, or the colonies as a whole, were in debt because of the Revolutionary War. They needed to have money. They needed to have a centralized way of making money. And this eventually led to the uprising, or the Shays' Rebellion, which led us into creating the Constitution because of the realization that we needed a way to fix our economy.